Driverly.com, unlimited drama series.
The asphalt shimmered like liquid mercury in the July heat as I pulled into the remote state park, 40 miles from civilization. My husband David sat beside me, trusting and clueless as always, while my heart hammered with anticipation. This was going to be perfect. "Beautiful spot, Z," David said, adjusting his baseball cap as he surveyed the empty parking lot, "though it's pretty isolated out here." I forced a smile, my phone already recording discreetly from the dashboard mount. "That's what makes it special, honey, just us and nature." David had always been so predictable, so boring. At 36, he spent his days as a building superintendent, fixing broken pipes and collecting rent checks. Where was the excitement? Where was the man who could surprise me, challenge me, make me feel alive? Meanwhile, my trainer Dax had been texting me all week about doing something wild and unforgettable. The way his eyes lit up when I mentioned my helpless husband gave me butterflies I hadn't felt in years. "I need to use the restroom," I announced, grabbing my purse. "There's a visitor center about a quarter mile that way. I'll be right back." David nodded, already pulling out his phone to check messages. So trusting. So naive. I walked toward the visitor center, my sandals clicking against the hot pavement. Once I was out of sight, I circled back to my car, my pulse racing with adrenaline. This would teach him to be more self-reliant. Maybe next time he'd plan our dates, instead of leaving everything to me. The engine started with a quiet purr. Through the rearview mirror, I could see David still sitting on the picnic bench, completely oblivious. I shifted into drive and pulled away, giggling as I imagined his confused face when he realized what happened. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Marina. "Did you do it yet? We're dying to see." I pulled over at a gas station 5 miles down the road and reviewed the footage. Perfect. You could see David's trusting smile, hear him talking about the beautiful spot, and then the camera captured my dramatic exit. I quickly edited it, adding text overlay, teaching my helpless hubby some independence. He'll figure it out, eventually. Within minutes of posting to my social media, the comments started flowing. "OMG Z, you're savage." "He looks so lost already, Lama. Ooh. Bet he calls mommy to pick him up." My phone rang. Marina's voice bubbled with excitement. "Girl, this is iconic. Tiana and I are sharing it everywhere." Your husband's face when he realizes, priceless. "I know, right?" I laughed, feeling more alive than I had in months. "He's probably panicking right now, trying to figure out how to call an Uber from the middle of nowhere." "How far out did you take him?" 40 miles. State park in the middle of nothing. No cell towers, no bus stops, just trees and hiking trails. Marina cackled. "You're terrible. I love it. He'll never live this down." After we hung up, I drove to Dax's gym. He was finishing up with a client, his muscled arms glistening with sweat as he demonstrated proper form. When he saw me, his face broke into that crooked grin that made my stomach flutter. "So," he asked, toweling off, "did you do it?" I showed him the video. He watched with growing amusement, shaking his head. "Damn, Z. Remind me never to get on your bad side." "He needs to learn he can't just coast through life expecting me to handle everything," I said, stepping closer. "A real man would find his way home." Dax's eyes darkened. "And what happens when he does?" "If he does," I corrected. "David's never been camping, never hiked more than a mile. He probably doesn't even know which direction leads to the highway." My phone kept buzzing with notifications. The video was getting shared beyond my friend group now, spreading through our social circles like wildfire. Someone had already made it into a meme with the caption, "When you marry a man-child." That evening, I lounged in my apartment, scrolling through hundreds of comments and shares. David's mother, Ruth, had called twice, but I let it go to voicemail. She'd probably lecture me about marriage responsibilities or some outdated nonsense. Our daughter Ava was staying at her grandparents' house for the week, which made this whole thing easier. No awkward questions about where Daddy was. Around midnight, I finally listened to Ruth's messages. "Zephra, David hasn't come home. I'm worried sick. Please call me back." "It's been 6 hours. I'm calling the police if I don't hear from you soon." I rolled my eyes. Such drama. David was probably sulking at some diner, trying to figure out how to spin this to make me look like the villain. Well, too bad. The internet had already decided who was the star of the show. I woke up to my phone buzzing incessantly. Overnight, my video had exploded across social media. Thousands of views, hundreds of shares, and comments ranging from supportive to concerned to downright harsh. Relationship goals. Teach him independence. This is abuse. How is this funny? Your husband looks like a lost puppy. Someone should call the police. This isn't a prank. The negative comments irritated me. These people didn't understand our relationship dynamic. David needed a wake-up call, and I'd given him one. If anything, I was helping him grow as a person. My phone rang. Ruth, again. Zafira, where's my son? Good morning to you too, Ruth. I stretched lazily in bed. David's fine. He's just learning some life skills. Life skills? He never came home last night. I've been calling hospitals, police stations. Oh, please, you're being dramatic. He's probably at some motel, too embarrassed to face the music. The music? What are you talking about? I realized she hadn't seen the video yet. Check my Instagram. Your precious boy is getting quite the education. The line went quiet for a long moment. Then, you left him stranded? 40 miles from home? In this heat? It's called a prank, Ruth. Maybe if you hadn't babied him his whole life, he'd know how to handle himself. You're sick. I'm filing a missing person report. Go ahead. When David shows up looking foolish, you'll be the one who looks crazy. I hung up and immediately called Marina. Ruth's freaking out. She's threatening to call the police. Let her, Marina laughed. The video's already viral. Everyone can see it was just a joke. David's probably hiding somewhere, too humiliated to come home. But as the day wore on, my confidence started wavering. David's phone went straight to voicemail. His credit cards showed no activity. Even his work called, asking where he was. By afternoon, 2 police officers knocked on my door. Mrs. Gresham, we need to ask you some questions about your husband's whereabouts. I invited them in, maintaining my composure. I'm sure his mother told you about our little prank. David's probably just being dramatic. Officer Martinez, a stern-looking woman in her 40s, pulled out a notepad. When did you last see your husband? Yesterday around noon. We drove out to Wildwood State Park for a picnic. And you left him there? As a joke, yes, to teach him some independence. In 95-degree heat, with no transportation, 40 miles from the nearest town. Put that way, it sounded worse than I intended. Look, David's a grown man. He has a phone, he has legs. If he wanted to come home, he could figure it out. The officers exchanged glances. Officer Chen, younger and more sympathetic, leaned forward. Mrs. Gresham, we've reviewed your social media posts. This appears to be premeditated abandonment, not a spontaneous prank. My stomach dropped. Premeditated? It was just a joke that got out of hand. You filmed it, edited it, and posted it online for entertainment. That suggests planning. Look, marriages have their ups and downs. Sometimes you need to shake things up. Officer Martinez stood up. We'll need you to come to the station for a formal statement, and we'll need access to your phone and social media accounts. Am I under arrest? Not yet. But abandoning someone in extreme conditions can constitute reckless endangerment, especially if something happens to them. After they left, I called Dax in a panic. The police were here. They're treating this like a crime. Shit, Z. Maybe you should take the video down. It's too late. It's been shared everywhere. People have screenshots. Look, I think we should cool things off for a while. This is getting too intense. Cool things off? Dax, I need your support right now. I can't get involved in legal drama. I have my trainer certification to think about. The line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief. When things got tough, everyone abandoned ship. That evening, I drove back to Wildwood State Park. Maybe David was still there? Maybe he'd gotten lost on the trails. I could find him, bring him home, and this whole thing would blow over. But the park was empty. A ranger at the gate remembered me from yesterday. "You're the lady who was laughing about leaving someone," he said, studying my face. "Police were here asking about that. Said you posted it online." "It was just a prank," I mumbled. "In this heat? Ma'am, we've had 3 heat stroke cases this week alone. Your husband could be in serious danger." I drove home with a growing sense of dread. What if something really had happened to David? What if this joke had gone too far? 3 days passed with no word from David. The police had expanded their search, interviewing park rangers, checking hospitals, even bringing in search dogs. His disappearance had become a local news story, with my viral video playing on repeat as evidence of domestic abandonment. My employer, a corporate HR compliance firm, called me into an emergency meeting. "Zafira," my supervisor Linda said, her voice cold as ice, "we've become aware of a viral video involving you and your husband. It's a personal matter. You work in compliance. Your job is literally about professional judgment and ethical behavior. This video shows you abandoning your spouse in dangerous conditions for social media entertainment." I felt the walls closing in. "Linda, please. It was just a prank that got blown out of proportion. You're being placed on unpaid administrative leave pending a full review. Security will escort you out." Walking out of my office with a box of personal belongings while coworkers whispered and stared was humiliating beyond words. The video that had made me feel powerful now felt like a millstone around my neck. That night, I was startled awake by sounds in the kitchen. Heart pounding, I crept down the hallway and flicked on the light. David stood at the counter, calmly making a sandwich. He looked thinner, sun-weathered, but very much alive. His clothes were dusty and his boots were worn, but his eyes held a clarity I'd never seen before. "David, thank God, you're okay." I rushed toward him, but he held up a hand to stop me. "Don't," he said quietly. "Where have you been? Everyone's been looking for you. The police, search teams, I know. I've been watching the news." "Watching? From where?" David took a bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly. "Did you know there's a truck stop about 15 miles east of Wildwood? And that truckers have dashboard cameras that record everything?" Something in his tone made my blood run cold. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the footage of you driving back to the park 3 hours after you left me, with someone else in the passenger seat." My mouth went dry. "I don't know what you mean." "Dax Moreno, your trainer. The dashcam caught his face clearly when you stopped for gas." I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly weak. "David, I can explain." "No need. I have all the explanation I need." He pulled out a thick manila folder from his backpack. "Bank records showing you drained our emergency fund last week. Credit card applications in my name that I never authorized. Text messages between you and your friends planning this prank for over a month." "How did you get my text messages?" "Family phone plan, remember? Everything backs up to the cloud, including your conversations with Dax about teaching your useless husband a lesson." I stared at him in shock. This wasn't the confused, helpless man I'd married. "Who are you?" David smiled grimly. "Someone you never bothered to get to know. Did you ever wonder why I was so good at reading maps? Why I always knew which direction was north? Why I could fix anything that broke? You're a building superintendent." "I'm an ex-military land navigation specialist. I spent 6 years teaching soldiers how to survive in hostile terrain. 40 miles through state forest?" "That's not abandonment, Z. That's Tuesday." The room spun around me. "You could have come home any time?" "I could have been home in 6 hours. But I decided to take my time, gather evidence, document everything." He pulled out a small device from his pocket. "GPS tracker in my watch. Recorded every step of my journey, every stop, every person I talked to. Why didn't you just come home?" David's expression hardened. "Because I wanted to see how far you'd go, how much you'd enjoy my suffering, and you exceeded my expectations." He slid a business card across the table. "That's my lawyer. You'll be hearing from him soon." David, please. We can work this out. It was just a stupid mistake. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. This was calculated cruelty. You humiliated me publicly, stole money from our accounts, and cheated on me with your trainer, all while our daughter was asking where Daddy went. Tears streamed down my face. I never meant for it to go this far. But you did mean for it to go viral. You did mean to embarrass me. You did mean to make me suffer. He stood up, towering over me. The only thing you didn't mean was to get caught. What happens now? David shouldered his backpack. Now you face the consequences. The police want to interview me tomorrow about the abandonment. The district attorney is reviewing your case for reckless endangerment, and I'm filing for divorce on grounds of cruelty. You can't take Ava from me. I'm not taking her. You gave her up when you chose social media fame over your family. He headed toward the door. I'll be staying at my mother's. My lawyer will be in touch. After he left, I sat in the dark kitchen, the weight of my actions finally sinking in. The man I...
You wrote him love poems. In 10 years, you never wrote me a word.
It was emotional.
How is he telling it another?
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
thought was weak and helpless had outmaneuvered me completely. While I was basking in online attention, he was methodically building a case that would destroy me. The next morning, I woke up to find my phone buzzing with notifications, but not the kind I wanted. Someone had leaked David's military background to social media, and the narrative around my video had completely flipped. She abandoned a trained survival expert thinking he was helpless. Plot twist: husband is ex-military, and wife is just an idiot. This aged like milk in the sun. She really thought she was the main character. My friend group chat was eerily quiet. When I tried calling Marina, she didn't answer. Tiana's phone went straight to voicemail. Even my parents, who had initially been supportive, were now asking uncomfortable questions about what really happened. Around noon, I received a call from a process server. Mrs. Gresham, I have documents to deliver. Will you be home this afternoon? What kind of documents? Divorce petition and restraining order. I can serve you at home or at your workplace. I'm currently unemployed. Then I'll see you at home. But I couldn't face being served at my apartment, where neighbors might see. Instead, I drove to Dax's gym, hoping to convince him to support me through this nightmare. I found him in the parking lot, loading equipment into his truck. When he saw me approaching, his expression turned cold. Z, you shouldn't be here. Dax, please. I need someone on my side right now. The whole world is turning against me. Maybe because you did something terrible? It was just a prank. You encouraged me to do something wild. I didn't encourage you to commit a felony. He slammed the truck door. Do you know the police came to interview me? They have our text messages, Z, all of them. What did you tell them? The truth. That you planned this for weeks, that you wanted to humiliate your husband, that you used me to make yourself feel better about your marriage. I felt like I'd been slapped. You're throwing me under the bus? I'm protecting myself. I have a business to run, a reputation to maintain. I can't be associated with someone who abandons their spouse in the desert. It wasn't the desert. 40 miles, 95 degrees, no transportation. Close enough. A car pulled into the parking lot. A middle-aged man in a suit got out, carrying a manila envelope. Zephyra Gresham? My heart sank. Yes, you've been served. He handed me the envelope in front of Dax, several gym members, and anyone else who happened to be in the parking lot. I could feel their eyes on me as I tore it open with shaking hands. The divorce petition was thorough and brutal. David was seeking full custody of Ava, citing abandonment, financial fraud, and adultery. The restraining order prohibited me from contacting him directly or coming within 500 feet of his mother's house. But the worst part was the attached evidence list. 37 pages of documentation. Social media posts, bank records, witness statements, GPS tracking data, and security camera footage from multiple locations. Z? Dax's voice sounded far away. You okay? I looked up to find several people filming me with their phones. The process server was walking back to his car, his job done. In a few hours, this would probably be online too. I need to go, I whispered. Yeah, Dax said, not unkindly. You probably should. The district attorney's office was intimidating in a way I hadn't expected. Cold marble floors, fluorescent lighting, and the constant sound of heels clicking against stone. I sat in a small conference room with my hastily hired lawyer, waiting to learn my fate. Mrs. Gresham, the prosecutor began, we've reviewed the evidence in your case. The abandonment of your husband in extreme weather conditions constitutes reckless endangerment under state law. My lawyer, a tired-looking man named Robert Chen, leaned forward. My client maintains this was a prank that went too far, not a criminal act. A prank that was planned for weeks, documented on video, and shared publicly for entertainment purposes. The prosecutor slid a tablet across the table. We have text messages going back a month, showing premeditation. I watched in horror as she scrolled through screenshots of my conversations with Marina and Tiana. Messages I'd forgotten about, jokes about teaching David a lesson and showing him what helpless really means. Furthermore, the prosecutor continued, we have evidence of financial fraud. Credit cards opened in your husband's name without his knowledge, joint accounts emptied without his consent. That's a separate civil matter, my lawyer began. Not when it's done in preparation for abandoning someone in dangerous conditions. It shows a pattern of calculated harm. The room felt like it was spinning. What are my options? Plead guilty to reckless endangerment and make full restitution, or go to trial and face additional charges of fraud and identity theft. I looked at my lawyer desperately. He shrugged. The evidence is overwhelming, Z. A plea deal is your best option. What does that mean for me? 2 years probation, community service, mandatory counseling, and full financial restitution to your husband, plus court costs and legal fees. And if I go to trial? Potentially 5 years in prison if convicted on all charges. I signed the plea agreement with a trembling hand, officially admitting that my harmless prank was actually a crime. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Somehow word had leaked that the viral abandonment wife was facing criminal charges. Cameras flashed as I tried to push through the crowd. Mrs. Gresham, do you regret leaving your husband stranded? What do you say to people calling you a domestic abuser? Is it true your husband is ex-military? How does it feel to be a viral villain? I made it to my car without answering any questions, but I knew the footage would be online within hours. My humiliation was now complete and permanent. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, scrolling through the latest wave of social media commentary. The story had taken on a life of its own, spawning memes, think pieces, and endless debate about marriage, pranks, and social media culture. Someone had even created a Wikipedia page about the incident, complete with a timeline of events and links to all the evidence. My viral video was embedded at the top, forever archived as an example of digital age domestic abuse. My phone rang. It was Ruth. Zephyra, I have something to tell you. What now? I'm filing for emergency custody of Ava. David's lawyer says it's our best option given your legal troubles. You can't take my daughter from me. You took yourself away from her when you chose internet fame over family stability. Ava needs consistency, not a mother who's facing criminal charges. Ruth, please. The hearing is next week. Don't make this harder than it has to be. After she hung up, I stared at my reflection in the black phone screen. The confident, empowered woman who had driven away from that park was gone. In her place was someone I barely recognized. A criminal, a viral villain, a cautionary tale. The family court hearing was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. David sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, looking calm and composed in a navy suit. I barely recognized him as the man I'd married. Gone was the passive, agreeable husband I'd taken for granted. This David was focused, determined, and utterly done with me. Ruth sat in the gallery behind him, holding Ava's hand. My 7-year-old daughter wouldn't even look at me. Your Honor, David's lawyer began, we're seeking emergency custody due to the respondent's criminal conviction and demonstrated pattern of reckless behavior. My lawyer did his best, but the evidence was overwhelming. The viral video played on the courtroom monitor, showing me laughing as I abandoned my husband. Bank records displayed my financial fraud. Text messages revealed months of planning and mockery. But the worst moment came when they played security footage from a truck stop dash cam. There I was, returning to the park with Dax in my passenger seat, both of us laughing as we drove past the spot where I'd left David stranded. The respondent didn't just abandon her husband, David's lawyer explained. She returned to the scene with her lover to mock his predicament, then left again without checking on his welfare. I had no memory of that return trip. We'd been so caught up in the excitement of the prank, so high on adrenaline and attraction, that it felt like a game. Watching it now, I looked like a monster. Mrs. Gresham, the judge said, "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" I stood on shaking legs. "Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I thought I was... The words wouldn't come. How could I explain that I'd felt trapped, bored, desperate for excitement? That I'd convinced myself David needed toughening up? "I'm sorry," I finally whispered. "I'm so sorry." The judge studied me with cold eyes. "Mrs. Gresham, your actions demonstrate a profound lack of judgment and empathy. You endangered your husband's life for social media entertainment, committed financial fraud to facilitate your scheme, and conducted an extramarital affair while your daughter was in your care. Your Honor..." I'm not finished. The evidence shows this wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, but a calculated campaign of humiliation and abuse. You filmed your husband's distress, shared it publicly, and returned to mock his situation while he walked 40 miles in dangerous heat. The gavel came down with finality. Emergency custody is granted to the paternal grandmother. Supervised visitation only for the respondent, pending completion of court-ordered counseling. I collapsed into my chair as the courtroom emptied around me. David gathered his papers without looking at me. Ruth led Ava toward the exit, my daughter's small hand still refusing to reach for mine. "Mommy?" Ava's voice was barely audible. "Are you the bad guy now?" The question hit me like a physical blow. In her innocent mind, our family had become a story with heroes and villains, and I was clearly the villain. "No, sweetheart," I whispered. "Mommy just made some very bad choices." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. I hadn't just made bad choices. I had become a bad person, someone who could abandon their spouse for entertainment and call it empowerment. 6 months later, I sat in my therapist's office, reading the final divorce decree. David had gotten everything: the house, primary custody, and most of our assets. I was left with debt, probation, and a reputation that would follow me forever. "How do you feel about the settlement?" Dr. Williams asked. "Like I got what I deserved," I admitted. David built an airtight case while I was busy playing victim on social media. "Do you understand now why your actions were harmful?" I nodded slowly. I thought I was the protagonist of my own story, the bored wife who needed excitement, the strong woman who wouldn't be held back by a weak husband. But I was actually the antagonist in everyone else's story. David's, Ava's, even my own. The viral video still lived online, a permanent record of my worst moment. Job interviews ended quickly when employers Googled my name. Dating was impossible when potential partners could watch me abandon my husband with a few clicks. But the hardest part was the supervised visits with Ava. She was polite but distant, treating me like a stranger she'd been told to be nice to. The easy intimacy we'd once shared was gone, replaced by careful conversations about school and friends. "Mommy," she said during our last visit, "Daddy told me you were sick when you left him in the woods. Are you better now?" David had given me an out, a way to explain my actions without making me the villain in our daughter's story. It was more kindness than I deserved. "I'm getting better, sweetheart. The doctors are helping me learn to make good choices." "Good," she said, hugging me briefly. "I want you to be happy, but not the kind of happy that hurts people." Out of the mouths of babes. A year later, I ran into Dax at a coffee shop downtown. He was with a new girlfriend, a young woman who looked at him with the same adoration I once had. When he saw me, his expression shifted to something between pity and embarrassment. "Z, how are you holding up?" "I'm surviving," I said honestly. "Working retail, living in a studio apartment, trying to rebuild my relationship with my daughter. I heard about the divorce. I'm sorry it worked out that way." "No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. I destroyed my family for a few minutes of viral fame and a cheap thrill with you." He looked uncomfortable. "It wasn't all your fault." "Yes, it was. You didn't force me to abandon my husband. You didn't make me steal money or humiliate him online. I did that because I thought I deserved better than the life I had. And now?" I looked out the window at the busy street, watching people go about their normal lives. Now I know that the life I had was pretty good. I just couldn't see it because I was too busy looking for something more exciting. David had remarried 6 months ago, a quiet ceremony with just family and close friends. His new wife was a teacher, someone who appreciated his steady nature instead of resenting it. Ava seemed happy with her new stepmother, posting pictures of family outings and school events. I wasn't invited to the wedding, of course, but I sent a card wishing them well, and I meant it. David deserved happiness after what I'd put him through. The viral video still surfaced occasionally, usually when someone wanted to make a point about social media culture or toxic relationships. I'd become a cautionary tale, a perfect example of how not to behave in marriage. But maybe that was fitting. If my story could prevent even one person from making the same mistakes, then perhaps some good could come from my spectacular downfall. I finished my coffee and headed back to work, just another face in the crowd. The woman who had once craved attention and validation now found peace in anonymity. It had taken losing everything to learn that the ordinary life I'd rejected was actually extraordinary in its own quiet way. The viral fame I'd sought had lasted a few weeks. The consequences would last forever. But maybe if I kept working on myself and slowly rebuilt trust with my daughter, I could write a better ending to my story. Even if the internet would never let me forget how it began.